Good morning, Hillside, and Happy New Year. Not exactly how we expected to start 2022 off in homes due to weather, the cold, all that fun stuff, but glad that we still are able to connect this way as well. Hey, just a few things I want to let you know about before we get started with the message this morning. One, next week is when we are kicking off our children's ministry for the full hour from birth through fifth grade. So it's going to be amazing. I'm so thrilled that we're going to be able to offer that again. And so just remember, if you have kids up through fifth grade, before you even come into service, you can go and check them in, get them into their classrooms so that they can experience a full hour of children's ministry so that we can give them an age appropriate message from different angles so that they can actually have an opportunity to learn and grow as well. So that's coming up. Also next week, we are also having our family meeting, which will be at 4 o'clock right back in the sanctuary. And so if you consider Hillside your church home, we really want you to be a part of that. We want you to come back for that meeting. It's going to be informative. It's going to be encouraging. It's going to kind of give a state of where the church is now and where we plan on going in the future. So you'll want to be a part of that meeting. Also, we have baptism coming up. We have membership class coming up. So if you're interested in either of those, then you need to email Jess at the church office to get registered for those as well. So a lot going on still here at Hillside, even though we didn't have service together today. So just wanted to make you aware of those things coming up. So we just finished off Christmas. Obviously, you can tell the Ovels still have the decorations up at home. If it were up to me, these would be up through February, but probably not going to happen, right? But New Year's Eve just took place. And isn't it amazing? Around the world, I mean, the world celebrates the coming of a new year. And I remember when the girls were little, they wanted to stay up to watch the ball drop, and they were too young to do that. But we lived in a place that had a great tradition for kids. We lived near Toledo, Ohio, and the Toledo Zoo had a noon Year's Eve, where at noon they would have a ball drop. Well, we went the first year and they had the ball drop at noon. They had all sorts of activities for the kids at the zoo, crafts and snacks, and of course you could see all the animals. And it was fun. It was great. The next year, though, they made this cool adjustment because they realized their target audience were kids, right? Smaller kids. And when the ball dropped, they couldn't see over the adults the climax of, oh, the ball is finally where it needs to be. Happy New Year and all that. So the following year, they had the ball go up instead of down. And so when it struck noon, the ball reached the peak and all the kids could see it. And it was just a ton of fun. It became a quick tradition for us while we lived in the area, and the kids loved it. But I remember telling the girls, look, staying up to midnight, nothing special happens, right? It's New Year's Eve. We all count down to midnight. But nothing spectacular really happens. The sky doesn't turn purple or anything like that. It's just normal. It's midnight, and now it's the next day. But we've created it as people. We've created it as this special time. You know, you kiss your spouse or your loved one right at midnight. All sorts of New Year's traditions of. For some, it's on New Year's Day. You need to have pork and sauerkraut for good luck. Here at our house, we have pork. We don't have the sauerkraut. So maybe we're just getting a little good luck. But, all these different traditions. And of course, one of those traditions is the New Year's resolution. Now, I'll have to admit, I've made plenty of New Year's resolutions in the past, and I've broken plenty of New Year's resolutions in the past. But it's something that millions of people still continue to do. I read one report where studies showed that only 9% of New Year's resolutions are kept, and that over 50% are broken before you even get to February. So why do we continue with this idea of New Year's resolutions if we're not that successful? Well, with the new year, we think of new and fresh, and for so many of us, we decide this is a time where I want to better myself. It's like a fresh start, even though it's not really. We see it as a fresh start. And so we have this date where we go, okay, now is when I'm going to make some changes. And interesting, on a Psychology Today article, it talked about why New Year's resolutions fail. And one of the big reasons is because we have this arbitrary date that all of a sudden we go, oh, I want to make X change in my life. And it's not that we're prepared for it. We haven't been planning for it. We haven't been mentally getting ready for it. It's just, oh, it's January 1st. I need to make a change. Therefore, I will make this change because this date is here. And the article went on to say what you need to do is you need to actually go through some steps. You need to, one, do an evaluation. Search yourself. What is it that you most want to change about yourself? Two, are you really ready to make that change? Are you willing to make the sacrifice it's going to take to make that change? Three, what's the plan? You need to have a plan. I mean, just because you say, oh, I want to lose weight. But if you don't have a plan on how that's going to happen, chances are you're not going to lose weight. So you need to evaluate. You need to think, am I ready to make the sacrifice? Do I have a plan? And do I have accountability? Is there someone that I'm going to share this with that will keep me accountable? Not that friend who is like, oh, you're okay, don't worry about it, right? They're probably not the one who's going to help keep you accountable. It's going to be someone who maybe has the same goal in mind that you can help keep each other accountable. So New Year's resolutions, what about spiritual? I mean, we dive into that as well here at the church. I'm going to read through the Bible this year. And how many of us have started reading through the Bible and we start in Genesis, and by the time we get to Leviticus or Numbers, we're about done. And because we really didn't have a great plan, maybe didn't have someone accountable. And really it was just a whim of, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'd like to read through the Bible. We really didn't think through, do I really want to? And am I willing to make the sacrifice, the time that it's going to take to do this? And do I have an accountability partner? Many of us have the goal of, I want to grow closer to God, which is great, obviously, right? In fact, that's what we really talk about a lot here at Hillside, is taking that next spiritual step. But again, just saying, this is what I want to do. What's the plan? Have you taken the time to really think through and pray and ask God, God, what is my next step? What is it that you want me to do? You know, in Matthew chapter 7, Jesus, it's kind of a little bit of a heavier verse or a harsh verse, but he's talking about seeing specks in other people's eyes and ignoring the plank in your eye, right? He's saying, how are you expecting to get that speck of sawdust out of your friend's eye when all of this time you got this huge plank in your own eye, you can't even see around it? First, what you need to do is you need to remove that plank from your eye, and then you'll be able to see clearly to remove the speck that's in your friend's eye. Now, right before that, Jesus even goes into, really you shouldn't judge other people, because how you judge other people is how you're going to be judged. So if you're a merciless judge, no mercy whatsoever, wow, that's how you're going to be treated. Where's the grace? Where's the love? So I want to talk about this just a little bit. As we're coming into a new year, I am looking forward to 2022. I'm looking forward to a great year here at Hillside. It's hard to believe a year ago, I was off doing fire stopping. I was working construction sites and things like that, and just asking God, where's the next church? What is it that you want for me? What's the next step you have for me? And lo and behold, here we are. A year ago, President Biden hadn't even been inaugurated yet. Just a little over 11 months ago, we had the Bernie Sanders picture going around with Bernie sitting there with his giant mittens. It's interesting, all these memories that when you realize, wow, that's just a year. Sometimes a year can seem like a long time, and there's a lot of good that happens in a year, and there's some challenges that happen in a year. I don't know of anyone who has gone through an entire year without any challenges. And so as we look forward to this year with Hillside, I am really excited for what God is going to do. And I'll tell you, I'll let you in on one of my New Year's resolutions. Okay, so here we go. We got accountability. I got an entire congregation that can keep me accountable for this. One of my resolutions this year is, God, help me follow you more. I have the spiritual gift of leadership. I love to lead, which is a great thing. But sometimes if you're a leader, you can tend to jump on ahead of other people and sometimes even jump on ahead of God. And this year, my New Year's resolution is, God, help me spend so much time in prayer each day. Help me start each day pausing and asking you to lead me. Because in order for me to be an effective leader this year, I'm going to need to be an effective follower. And so that's what I've been doing. I've been just asking God, what is it within me that I need to work on that you want me to strengthen or develop? So here we are with that passage again of the plank. And Jesus is saying, look, first what you need to do is, before you start looking at everybody else and telling everyone else what they need to be doing, telling everyone else, hey, you got that speck in your eye, you need to take care of that. You need to do a self-evaluation. And lo and behold, you might notice there's a huge plank in your eye that needs to be taken care of. So the challenge is, before we start looking and pointing to everyone else and letting them know what their resolution should be, have you taken the time to allow God to examine your life and to point out areas in your life that he wants to work on for you in 2022? Boy, I tell you, it's great. It's wonderful sometimes, and easy. Feels good to be able to, dig at other people and go, oh, yeah, they ought to change this. They ought to change that. And instead of going, oh, this is what I need to do. I mean, I remember in coaching, there were times when I was telling a wrestler, hey, you need to improve in these areas. But before I could actually tell them to work on this move or that move, I had to make sure I knew what I was talking about and that I could actually do the move as well. How in the world am I going to be able to coach someone on a move if I don't even know the whole workings of it, right? And sometimes I feel like church, man, we're almost as good here in church as politicians are at deflecting. When someone asks a question of a politician that they don't want to answer, that might be bringing up a flaw of something that they did or a legislation that has some kind of big loopholes or whatever, oftentimes they'll deflect and go, well, my colleagues across the aisle or my friends across the aisle do this or that, and this is really what you should be asking about. And deflect. And sometimes I think in the church we can do the same thing. We can start to feel a little bit of that twinge from God saying, hey, there's something I need you to work on. And the first thing we want to do is we want to point to someone else. Well, what about them? So I want to encourage you for 2022. Now, not just because we just turned a new year, but because you really, really want to. I want you to have this, to be a year of great spiritual growth in your life. Now, here's the deal. Some of you are new in Christ and saying, wow, yes, I have a lot to grow. I have a lot to learn, but I don't know what my next steps are. And so you might be feeling like, oh, well, I don't know if I'm going to be able to take great strides. I'm just new at this. Trust me. If you're open to God's Spirit working in you, if you're open to being obedient to what God is calling you to, this can be a year of great spiritual growth. Some of you might be on the other spectrum, right? You've been a Christian for decades. And so there can be the tendency or the temptation to think, well, I've not quite arrived, but well, there's not a whole lot left for me to grow. There's not a whole lot more room. I've read through the Bible 20 times now. I have the entire book of Romans memorized. I've taught Sunday school class. I've been on the board. I've helped in worship. You can name off all these things that you've done. And you think, well, there's not a whole lot of room for growth for me. I would gently suggest stop comparing yourself to other people and compare yourself to God. Where are you there? I mean, if as Christ followers we're to become more like Christ, if all of a sudden our standard is comparing ourselves to Christ, I would hope that we would all say, oh, yeah, there's still room for growth. But the key is going to be this. Are you willing to take the time to do some just reflection? God, what is it that you want me to change? What steps do you want me to take? Are you willing to take that time and allow God to speak directly or through others? Are you willing then also to make the sacrifices that he may be asking you to make? I mean, for some of us, it might be as simple as, man, like Jay was saying last week, we should be spending more time reading God's word, or more time praying, or more time reflecting on what we're learning and how to apply it to our lives. Yeah, the sacrifice might be, I need to give up more of my personal time and spend more time with God. For some of us, there might be some things in our life, maybe not even necessarily sins in our life, but things that are entangling us and hindering some of that growth that God is asking us to put to the side. Are you willing to make those sacrifices? Are you willing to find someone that can help keep you accountable? In other words, are you willing to actually verbalize this to someone that you can meet on a regular basis, see on a regular basis, and give them permission to check to see how you're doing? And finally, what's the plan? Now, on next week at the family meeting, we're going to talk about how, as a church, what's our plan to help people take next spiritual steps. What is it that we're going to do? See, we want to start talking about, we want to engage our community, we want to engage others with the hope of Jesus Christ. And we want to encourage and equip people to take their next spiritual step. The last thing I want to do is, the last thing I desperately want to do is be a church that continuously says you need to take that next step, you need to take the next step, and encourage people to take the next step, but not give them any tools or equip them to be able to take whatever that step is that God is asking them to take. And so next week we're going to talk a little bit about what that might look like here at Hillside. Again, can you imagine me as a coach going up to one of the wrestlers and telling them, you know what, your double leg, horrible. Your double leg is a miserable move. You need to improve on that. And then just turn around and walk away and not give them any ways of improving that. No, I would be a horrible coach. That's not how you coach. That's not how you improve people. You need to encourage, but also equip. And so next week we're going to learn a little bit about that. But I will say this. All of us as Christ followers also have the Spirit within us. And the Spirit has the ability to be able to equip us as well. And let's go back to that coaching illustration. Even if I tell a wrestler, you need to improve on your double leg takedown, and then I show them how to improve on that double leg takedown, it's going to take that wrestler deciding to work on it in order to make that happen. And so again, we're going to be working on that as a church, but as an individual, you can also, through the Spirit, be equipped to take those next steps. You just have to decide, are you willing and able? Are you willing to make that sacrifice? Are you really wanting to change? Are you really wanting to take those next steps? 2022 is here. We can't stop it. The new year has arrived. And I believe it's going to be a great year for Hillside. I believe it can be a great year for us as a congregation, and I believe it can be a great year for us as individuals. Will there be challenges? Absolutely. I mean, Jesus himself said, look, in this world you're going to have troubles, but be of good cheer because God, Jesus, has overcome the world. We will face challenges, folks. I guarantee you. We're living in a broken world. We're human. But I also believe we're going to have great celebrations as well. And so I look forward to 2022. I look forward to all that God's going to do through us and with us. And I can't wait to get to 2023 and to be able to look back and to tell stories and to hear stories about how I've taken steps, you've taken steps, and as a church, we have taken our next spiritual steps. Can't wait to see you all next week in person. Have a great week.